One bad Halloween. This happened about 5 years or so ago on Halloween, and surprisingly enough, didn't really have a lot to do with the holiday itself. This particular year, some friends and I were invited to a party, so we planned to go into the city for dinner, then to the party. I'm not sure where the idea came from, but of the 5 men, 3 decided to dress in drag for our costumes. 2 of us were not pretty at all, and one of us looked like a hot girl. I was one of the ugly girls. We took the train to the nearest stop to my friend's party, which we discovered was in a pretty notoriously bad part of town. Needless to say, there was a lot of discomfort while we got awkward stares and a couple of creepy catcalls. We made it no problem and went to the party, which sucked. We only wound up staying about 40 minutes before taking off. We were kind of on edge anyways from the whole scenario, but on the way back, we had to walk past an older gentleman and a dog on either sides of the sidewalk. He was pretty average, looked like a stock photo you'd use to describe someone's grandfather. He glared at us as we passed, and we avoided eye contact. As I passed, however, the dog jumped back and barked at me. The man yelled, "Hey!" at us loudly. We just kept walking. So I'm not sure if it was that he thought I kicked the dog or something, if it had to do with the taste in women's clothing or something else, but as we walked back to the train, the older gentleman, Sans dog, began following us. None of us really noticed it until he overtook 2 of our friends at the back. As we walked, it was a group of 5 of us at the front, with me at the back, and then a good 10 feet between me and the last 2 members of our group. I was unaware, but he continued behind me and slowly started to close a distance between himself and I. By this time, we were about a block away from the train station. He was right behind me. At that point, my friend in the back called out to us. "Guys," she said it, with a little panic in her voice. As we turned, the guy stopped suddenly with his arms up, as though he was surprised. He changed directions immediately and walked quickly down a side street. My friend at the back told me that she and her boyfriend in the back were having that horror movie moment when you're so scared that it's hard to speak. She told me that when he passed them, he was focused on me, and once he was right behind me, he matched my pace rather than trying to pass by. She finally called out to us out of terror because he was reaching into his coat pocket. I still shiver thinking about that. Followed down the street, saved by off-the-clock taxi driver. I just had a creepy encounter. As soon as I got home, I had an anxiety attack and was very nauseous. I am now calm and would like to recount what just happened a few hours ago when I left work. I work at a bar in suburb of Melbourne that is safe during the day, but has become sort of notorious for a high rate of rapes and abductions during nighttime, specifically along this main street that my work is on. I often work night shifts or late shifts. Tonight, I finished at 11. For some context, I am a petite 19-year-old girl. So, I got out of work at 11 and started to walk down the street, which is quite well lit in some parts, but quite dark in others, and began looking for a taxi to hail. I was having no luck finding one. In fact, there are very few cars about, which is unusual. I looked across the road and saw a dude with a hoodie on that was concealing most of his face. He looked pretty young, maybe early mid-20s, and high on something. He seemed quite shady to me, and I noticed he was pretty tall but thin. I guessed I looked at him for too long, because then he crossed the street towards me. I stopped looking at him and started walking sort of fast down the street, looking behind me to keep my eye on his distance and to now more desperately get in a taxi. I turned around to look at him, and to my relief, he was walking into a side street. I stepped onto the street, trying to get a better view down the road, when he came back around from the side street. My stomach dropped as I saw he was now with 2 more guys. I started to walk really fast now, and they began to walk after me. I was walking as fast as I could without jogging. I was getting really panicked, and was thinking of hailing down any car to ask someone for help. The 3 men were getting closer and closer, and they were shouting at me, but my anxiety sunk in, and I didn't hear what they said. It was only white noise. A taxi with its lights off drove past, and I ran out onto the middle of the road. The driver said he was finished for the day and wasn't taking any more customers. I told him I was being followed, and asked if I could just sit in his car for a second to feel safe. He let me in the taxi and drove 20 meters away and told me to get out. The men were all still there. I begged him to take me out of sight a little further down the road. He noticed how scared I was and got all concerned and fatherly. The taxi driver was extremely lovely and refused to let me get out of his car until he had found me another taxi to take me home. He drove around with me for a few minutes until we found one. He beeped the other cab down and explained the situation to him, so I thanked him profusely and got swapped cars. The next driver was also so nice. He said he had a young daughter and got quite upset and angry thinking about how people can take away your right to feel safe. I feel like I was in real danger, so I'm thankful they were there and helped me out. So, shady group of men, let's not meet. Hoodie guy sprinted after me. This happened to me about 6 months ago in Australia. I was walking home from a mate's house at around 2 or 3 a.m. It's about a 20-minute walk along a couple of medium-sized streets. The streets were always really quiet, but I've done this walk heaps of times before without any issue. I was pretty tired and still a little tipsy, so I was just kinda dawdling along. As I started to go up a hill, I got the sudden urge to look behind me. For no real reason, I glanced back and saw that a tall, skinny guy in a black hoodie was walking along the road in the same direction as me, maybe 80 to 100 meters away. I should mention that I am a short female, but I wear men's and masculine clothing and hats, so I don't really worry about getting hassled by men as much as some other girls. But I was still aware of the fact that we were the only two people around, and that there were plenty of dark places along the street. So, a bit further along the walk, I glance back again, and I see that he's closer than he was before, maybe like 40 meters away this time. I told myself I was just being paranoid and he was only catching up to me because I was walking so slowly. I still sped up a bit though, and felt my heart beat a little faster. After 5 or so minutes of power walking, I stopped at some traffic lights to cross the road. When I stopped, I heard his footsteps behind me and realized how much he had caught up now. He was definitely aiming to keep up with me. I immediately crossed the road, barely checking for traffic, and looked back at him from the other side. He still had his black hoodie on, and we were in a dark section of the street, so I couldn't see his face or anything like that. When he started to cross the road towards me, I was telling myself not to start running yet, because I felt like he could probably outrun me and catch up before I could get to my house. My house is on a tiny side street coming on the larger road we were on. I could still hear his footsteps power walking, keeping pace just behind me. As I'm about 5 meters away from my street, I sped up a little more without actually breaking into a run. I start to cross my street, trying to act as though I was going to keep going past it down the same road, until I was about halfway across, when I prayed that the high fences on either side and darkness of the street would give me some cover. I sidestepped as far as I could into my street. I turned sharply and started absolutely sprinting as fast as I could down the middle of the street. I sprinted straight past my house to the footpath at the end of my street that joins to another road. The first half of the path is stairs because it's a really steep hill up to the road. So after bounding up the stairs 3 steps at a time, I turned around and saw the hoodie guy sprinting down my street, coming after me. I've never felt such a huge shot of adrenaline before in my life as I did when I saw him running at me. I thought I had already run as fast as I possibly could down the street and up the stairs, but the adrenaline went straight to my legs, and I started flying up the last half of the steep path like it was nothing, like I was running up a moving escalator. When I got to the top, I could either turn left or right. I turned right and kept sprinting along the road past 2 houses that had high fences and hedges until I got to a house that had only a small garden bed in front of it. I jumped over the garden and crammed myself into a bush. I was so scared. I had to hold my hands over my mouth to stop panting so loudly. The street was deserted and silent, so I easily heard the hoodie guy's footsteps pounding up the hill. I heard him stop, but he was breathing really heavily, so I peeked out to see what he was doing. He was at the top of the path clutching his side, bent over like he was gonna puke, looking left and right, up and down the street. He made up his mind, spat on the ground and turned left. I watched him jog away, still looking around everywhere for me. As soon as I realized he was out of sight, I lay down on the ground and let myself pant and breathe for a bit until I felt like I could walk again. All I wanted was to be home. I kept going to the right further down the street because it connected with the other road I was on before, so I could circle back to my house and keep some distance from the hoodie guy. In the end, I made it home safe. Got myself kidnapped. I drove them to a drug deal as Evanescence played in the background, the most surreal night of my life. As a humanist, I tried to look for opportunities to help my fellow humans, to be a living font of kindness and compassion, hopefully leaving the world nicer than when I found it. But I read a similar thread, and later comments says it well. There's a thin line between kindness and naivety. I also learned this the hard way. 3 to 4 years ago, I was 24, am female, recently single and living happily alone. I left work at around 3 a.m., the joys of service industry, and I'd just given a ride home to a coworker who closed with me. It wasn't a bad part of town per se, but not the greatest. Whatever. Time to head home and get some sleep myself. Patiently waiting at a red light. Streets are void of cars and people. It is 3 a.m. when I notice a man and woman stumbling down the sidewalk to my right. The man knocks on my car window and I flinch. My car doesn't have electronic anything and my window was already down an inch. But maybe they need help or something. Why else would they be staggering around at 3 a.m.? Her ankle is broken, she can't walk. The lady is kind of swaying just out of view, moaning either in pain or inebriation. I frown. I can call someone if you like, or there's a gas station over there, maybe you could. The guy opens my front passenger door. My coworker hadn't locked it, and the woman staggers into my car. It happened so fast. I was stunned. Even more so when the guy squeezed in beside her. 2 people somehow fitting into the front seat of my Toyota Corolla. I was supremely conscious of the woman's leg pressing against my purse. At her feet, inside was my phone, Kindle, and wallet, with all the hard-earned money I'd made the past 2 weeks of waiting tables, my rent, and more. They reek of alcohol, and their eyes have this glaze to them. They are high as fuck. The guy tells me, "You're to drive us to the Kroger." "You mean the Walmart just up the street?" "Drive! Go! Drive!" Okay. I stammered and complied. Were they armed? I didn't want to find out. The guy was drinking something out of a bottle in a brown paper bag like a class act. What would they do if I refused? They were clearly in an altered state, unpredictable, dangerous, don't escalate, don't provoke. I pressed my lips into a forced smile. I decided I would be as calm and polite as I could manage, and maybe they'd have second thoughts about murdering someone so nice, or at least feel a little bad about it. Fuck. They tried to engage me in conversation as we drove. The woman seemed about 40, leathery skin and quite manic. She would rattle off schizophrenic nonsense 1 minute and then become increasingly lucid and well-spoken on a complex topic like computer science for the next. Watching her go back and forth between the 2 states was truly surreal. She told me I didn't need to be scared. They weren't going to hurt me, just needed a ride. I nodded. I smiled. I continued to scream internally. The man seemed much older than she was, in his 60s, bald, with a wisp of white hair, maybe her uncle, maybe her father. He would only speak up to give turn-by-turn directions and would absolutely lose his shit at me if I so as much changed lanes unexpectedly. As the neighborhood deteriorated around us, I desperately scanned the roads for a police car on patrol. I would call attention to myself somehow, run a red light, honk, swerve at them, anything to draw attention, and I would be saved, and no such luck. My passengers were becoming increasingly agitated and paranoid as we neared our destination. They could sense my fear because the woman began to play with my hair and stroke my cheek. "Hey, don't be scared. I said we're not gonna hurt you. You're such a nice girl." She cooed in my ear. "You're so nice. Such a pretty white girl." Holy shit. The man chuckled. I see the Kroger across the street, but no, they screamed at me, "Turn left! Into the sketchiest apartment complex ever." My heart sank. This is how it ends, I thought. Raped, or dead, or both. They have me idle in the parking lot, and the guy gets out. "I'm gonna be right back. Make sure she don't go nowhere. We got more stops after this." Oh hell no. The woman stays with me in the car, and the guy disappears into one of the units. This is obviously a drug deal. I idly wonder if I'm guilty of a crime now, an accessory to something. I wonder if they try to get me to come party with them later or some shit. Not going to happen. I knew that if they got me out of my car, it'd be the beginning of the end. Once the man leaves, the woman spreads out in the passenger seat. I think she's just making herself comfortable, until her legs part suggestively, and she begins to sexy slow dance in my 2008 Toyota Corolla to my Immortal. She looks over at me with her most lustful set of bedroom eyes. She bites her lips and her hands travel up her thighs. She asks me, "You like what you see?" Is this really happening? Did she just proposition me while sexy dancing to Evanescence? As if this night could not get more bizarre. Luckily, my poker face is fucking strong and I suppressed any reaction. I break into an apologetic smile. "Oh no, but thank you. I don't swing that way." I hastily switch one of my everyday rings to my wedding finger and hold it up with a regretful smile. I'm married, you see, and my husband is expecting me home soon. Her seductive demeanor drops like a curtain, her face twisting with fury and indignation. What do you think I am? Think I'm a hooker? It wasn't like that. I didn't mean it like that." What the absolute fuck? "Oh, no, I didn't think that at all. I'm sorry. I'm just very tired because I worked all day. It's late." She stares at me hard, eyes wide and struggling to focus, until her face breaks into another wide, manic smile. She slumps back into the chair, seemingly satisfied with my answer, and we share an uncomfortable silence. I had to do something. No way was I going to see how this night played out with me and the two of them. My eyes dart to the unit the man went into, and I lean over to the woman, my face a mask of concern. "Hey, he's been gone for a long time. Do you think we should go check on him? Make sure he's okay?" Her eyes narrow suspiciously, and she gives me a wry smile. "You won't just drive away?" I summoned every ounce of angelic calm and poured it into my voice. "Of course not." "You promise?" "Yes!" I smiled warmly. "I promise," dying a little more inside. Imagine my surprise when it actually worked. I watch her get out of the car and close the door. I fucking book it. Rubber screeching, heart pounding. It's so dark, so I don't bother looking back. I tried to leave the complex, but there's only one exit, the way we came in, which is right where I dropped them off. I pull into a random parking spot several buildings away and turn off my car, ducking into the seat and calling. Well, should have called the police then and there, but I didn't feel like I was out of the woods yet. But I was safe-ish, and called a friend and broke down into tears, explaining everything over the phone. Once the adrenaline wore off, I started my car back up. No sign of anyone watching the gate or looking for me. I make my getaway and arrive home safely, about 30 minutes later. Called the police then, and an officer was sent over to take my statement. I didn't expect anything to come of it, but wanted the event on record in case there was retaliation. They knew where I worked because of my uniform, which also had my name prominently displayed, as well as what car I drove, obviously. The officer asked where I ended up taking them, and from my vague description, he instantly knew the location. High crime area. Lots of drug-related incidents. Great! I still drive that 2008 Corolla. My next car will have electric locks.